She never pulled a trigger. She never signed a death warrant. She never wore a uniform or gave an order. And yet, historians, scholars, and survivors have argued for decades that she may have done more damage than most soldiers ever could, because she made them beautiful. Her name was Leni Riefenstahl, and if you've never heard of her, that is exactly the problem. Hello and welcome back. My name is Martin Richter, and today we are going somewhere genuinely uncomfortable, because I've been thinking about Leni Riefenstahl for a long time, and the more I learn about her, the more disturbed I become, not just by what she did, but by how easy it is to almost understand her, almost admire her, and that terrifies me. She was, by almost any measure, a genius, a pioneer, a woman who shattered every barrier her era placed in front of her. She was also a propagandist for Adolf Hitler, and her films, her art, helped seduce an entire civilization into genocide. So the question we're going to wrestle with today isn't just what she did, it's how much does intent matter when the consequences are millions of deaths. Let's go back to the beginning. Berlin, 1920s. The city is electric and collapsing at the same time. Inflation is destroying families. Revolution is in the air. And a young woman named Helene Bertha Amalia Riefenstahl, Leni, is doing something radical for her time. She is performing. Born in 1902 to a middle-class Berlin family, Leni showed an almost frightening level of ambition from childhood. Her father wanted her domestic and obedient. She wanted stages, lights, and audiences. So she trained, obsessively, as a dancer. And by her early 20s, she was actually succeeding, performing across Germany, building a name. Then, a knee injury ended it. I think about that moment a lot, because what happened next tells you everything about who Leni Riefenstahl was. Most people, facing that kind of loss, would grieve and adjust. Leni looked at the industry that had just closed its doors to her and decided to break into the room next door. She became an actress, then a director, in an era when women simply did not do such things. Her early films, the so-called mountain films, made her a minor celebrity. These were romanticized epics set in the Alps, full of heroic struggle and natural grandeur. Looking back, it's hard not to notice how perfectly they primed her for what came next. The glorification of physical strength, the worship of will over weakness, the camera lingering on bodies straining towards something higher. It seems to me that Leni Riefenstahl had an aesthetic that was almost pre-designed for fascism, long before she ever met Adolf Hitler. And then, in 1932, she did. She attended one of his rallies, and by her own account, she was transfixed. That single moment is where the story stops being about ambition and starts being about complicity. Leni Riefenstahl claimed, for the rest of her very long life, that she was not a Nazi, that she was simply an artist, that she didn't understand what Hitler truly was until it was too late. I find that very, very hard to believe, By 1933, Hitler had seized power and commissioned Riefenstahl to film a Nazi party rally. The result, Victory of Faith, was rough, experimental, but it got her the next job, the one that would define her forever. Triumph des Willens, or Triumph of the Will, 1935. Here's what you need to understand about this film. It is, technically speaking, one of the most accomplished pieces of filmmaking ever made. Riefenstahl used 30 cameras, 120 crew members, and invented techniques, moving cameras, aerial shots, crowd choreography, that Hollywood wouldn't catch up to for years. And it was all in service of making Adolf Hitler look like a god. The film opens with Hitler's plane descending through clouds over Nuremberg, as if he is literally descending from the heavens. Below him, hundreds of thousands of people arranged in geometric perfection. The imagery is breathtaking, and it was designed to be. Every frame was calculated to make the viewer feel small, overwhelmed, and grateful for the man at the center of it all. I wonder sometimes what Leni was thinking behind that camera. Was she purely absorbed in the craft? Did she feel the crowd's fervor and share it? Or was she already making deals with herself, telling herself that art is separate from politics? What we know is this: Triumph of the Will was not a documentary. It was a staged performance. The rally was choreographed for the camera. Riefenstahl worked directly with Nazi officials on the arrangement of crowds, the scheduling of events, the lighting. She was not a neutral observer. She was a co-author of a lie designed to make fascism feel inevitable. Then came 1936, the Berlin Olympics, and Olympia, 2 films, 4 hours, considered by many to be the greatest sports documentary ever made. It was also state-funded Nazi propaganda, designed to show the world a Germany that was civilized, powerful, and worthy of admiration. The world largely bought it, and Leni Riefenstahl won international awards, stood in the glow of global acclaim, shook hands with world leaders, as the machinery of the Holocaust quietly began to turn. November 9th, 1938. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues across Germany are destroyed. Nearly 100 Jews are murdered in a single night. Tens of thousands are arrested. Leni Riefenstahl was in the United States at the time, on a press tour for Olympia. American audiences, disgusted by the news from Germany, largely refused to see her. Hollywood doors slammed shut. She sailed home. And here is where my stomach turns, because the historical record shows that Riefenstahl went back to Germany, continued working within the regime, and, this is documented, used Roma prisoners from a concentration camp as extras in one of her later film projects. These people were returned to the camp after filming. Most of them did not survive the war. She said later in life that she didn't know, that she had no idea what the camps were, that she believed they were labor camps, that she couldn't have known. It seems to me that this is one of the most morally catastrophic sentences a person can utter, because not knowing when you are embedded with the most powerful people in a genocidal state is not innocence. It is a choice, a deliberate, sustained refusal to see. I've read interviews where she says she never read Nazi newspapers, never attended political meetings, never engaged with ideology. She wanted only to make films, only art, only beauty. But here's what I keep coming back to. Beauty in service of evil is evil. The most effective propaganda in history doesn't look like a weapon. It looks like a masterpiece. And I think Leni Riefenstahl knew exactly what she was doing, even if she built walls inside herself to avoid the word for it. The war ends in 1945. Germany is rubble. Hitler is dead. And Leni Riefenstahl has a reckoning to face. Or so the world thought. Leni Riefenstahl went through 4 denazification trials after the war. 4. She was classified, ultimately, as a fellow traveler, someone who benefited from the Nazi regime without being a formal member. She never spent a day in prison. And she never, not once, in any interview, in any memoir, in any public statement, offered a genuine apology. Instead, she spent the next 6 decades doing something almost impressive in its audacity. She reinvented herself, repeatedly. In the 1960s and 70s, she traveled to Sudan and produced a series of photographs of the Nuba people, striking, beautiful images of a culture in danger. The photography world was dazzled. Then, critics noticed. The aesthetic was the same. The glorification of physical perfection, the body as ideal, the lens that turned human beings into symbols of strength. Riefenstahl called it art. Others called it the fascist gaze in a new costume. Then, in her 70s, she learned to scuba dive and spent the next decades underwater, photographing coral reefs. Her book, Coral Gardens, was published when she was in her 90s. She gave interviews about her passion for the ocean. She was charming, she was magnetic. She was still, infuriatingly, good at what she did. She died in 2003 at the age of 101, and even in death, the argument didn't stop. Because here's the thing that I genuinely wrestle with. Does the quality of the art matter? Does it change anything that Triumph of the Will is technically brilliant? That Olympia contains images of genuine beauty? I don't think it does, and here's why. Art is not neutral. It never was. When you choose to point your camera at power, when you choose to make that power gorgeous, you are making a political act. You are lending it something it cannot manufacture for itself, the legitimacy that beauty provides. Leni Riefenstahl gave Hitler that gift, knowingly, repeatedly, brilliantly. And 6 million Jews died in the shadow of the world she helped sell. I think about the Roma extras returned to the camps. I think about the name she never learned to say. I'm sorry. I think about the 101 years she lived, more years than most of her victims ever had the chance to dream of. And I think the world was far too gentle with Leni Riefenstahl. So here's where I leave you. Leni Riefenstahl was not a simple monster. She was something more dangerous than that. A brilliant, ambitious, willfully blind human being who made the choice, over and over again, to serve a machine of death because it gave her the resources to make extraordinary things. She is proof that talent is morally neutral, that craft, divorced from conscience, can become a weapon, and that the most effective collaborators in history are not the ones who hate, they're the ones who simply don't ask. It's hard to believe that someone who lived to 101 never found a quiet moment to truly reckon with what she'd done. But I think that's exactly what happened. Because real reckoning would have required her to admit that her greatest works, the ones she was most proud of, were built on the foundation of a crime against humanity. And some people, it seems, would rather die unrepentant than live with that truth. The question I want to leave with you, and I genuinely don't have a clean answer, is this. At what point does an artist's work become inseparable from the evil it serves? And if we admire the craft while condemning the cause, are we making the same mistake she did? Think about that. If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means it's working. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know, do you think Leni Riefenstahl deserves any sympathy, any understanding? Or does the body count simply end the conversation? Subscribe if you want more stories like this, the ones that don't fit neatly into good or evil, hero or villain, because history rarely does. I'll see you in the next one.